I'm very pleased to see you all here this morning. Welcome to our 27th Annual Investment Conference. We've had a lot of different topics and things to cover over the years. Fortunately, the last 10, 12 years, we've had some very interesting markets in which to reflect upon when we've had our seminars and our conferences going on. We're going to run at a pretty good pace this morning. We always have had our conferences on Fridays to make it easy for people traveling from out of town so they don't miss very much work. And we've always found that Friday afternoons are a little tough to hang on to people. Everybody's minds are starting to wander and their bodies kind of follow them out the door sometimes. So we decided to be a little bit aggressive and push through 3 speakers this morning, and we'll just start lunch a little bit later for those of you who are going to stay. I want to do my best to keep us on time this morning. In fact, I got a little, well, I wouldn't call it warning from Tom yesterday, but he said, I have to adjust course a little bit based on some things that happened, and so please make sure that you're on time. So I will do my best. You can go ahead and go to the next page, Steve. The last 3 years, yesterday for that matter, have certainly been an interesting time for us as investors, and the markets have given us a lot of pause. And in fact, a number of you have come to us in recent years because of the pause that you've had, and others came to us in the early part of the last decade for that same kind of a reason. We all got up close and personal with the experience of risk and reward, and indeed we watched and participated as history unfolded over the last couple of years. And we experienced the worst credit market and the worst stock market crises since the Great Depression. I would dare say that most of us here and most of us out there didn't think that most of that could happen. For some investors, the events were so up close and personal that they took some drastic measures. There was a French investor by the name of De La Villouche who lost over $1 billion for other investors, mainly from wealthy European families, because he had invested their money with Madoff. He committed suicide, and he had dramatically misjudged risk and reward. In everything in life, there is, of course, risk and reward. We go about our lives every day making assessments about what risks we will take or not take. When we cross the street, we have to make those assessments. If we buy a convertible car, we have to make that assessment. We find risk and reward in our social relationships, in our academic discussions, in athletics, in virtually every aspect of our lives. We're having to make trade-offs between risk and reward, or perhaps cost and benefit. There are explicit risks that we choose to take, and then there are those that we choose not to take, and we acknowledge that there are opportunity costs associated with them. Risk can be fickle. It moves around sometimes. Sometimes it's hard to find out exactly where it is. We may underestimate risk associated with what we perceive the rewards to be, or maybe we are even oblivious to risk. Maybe we're a little too confident that we can manage events to mitigate risk. I sort of suspect that's where this little kitty is, that it's eyeing that pelican. Professor and author, securities trader Nassim Taleb has given us a language, the language of the black swan pictured here, to describe events of risk or reward that carry extreme impact. They're not always negative. Sometimes they're quite positive. And they can be so substantially outside the realm of our experiences that we really don't see them coming. We don't have any frame of reference that says this could happen. Black swans, in fact, their very existence, illustrates a severe limitation to our learning from personal experience. As economist Peter Bernstein explained, we are never certain. We are always ignorant to some degree, and much of the information we have is either incorrect or incomplete. So today we're going to look at our assessment of risk and reward, focusing on the cognitive and emotional influences of our assessment and how we get those risks wrong and how we get those risks right. It'll be helpful to keep a couple of things in mind as we go through. Extraordinary uncertainty and risk still abound. If you weren't sure of that yesterday morning, I suspect you're sure of that this morning. Mission's Chief Investment Officer has spent a fair amount of time talking about the uncertainty that remains if you look at the quarterly market commentaries in his blog and other writings over the last several quarters. Perhaps the storm has passed, or perhaps we're in the eye of the hurricane. The importance of having a clear understanding of risk, and especially your individual or your organization's ability to sustain loss, is critical. You should wonder whether or not it's really possible for you to get a good, clear fix on your willingness and your tolerance for risk. It's almost always different when we're making the decision to take risk than the way we actually experience loss or experience a relatively permanent change to the way we have to live our lives because of the risks we've taken that didn't pan out. Often there's a large gap, and we don't know ourselves really as well as we think we do. We still have the opportunity, however, to better understand ourselves, how we process information, how we judge risk and reward. If we do, we stand a chance at having better decisions around our investment management and how well we assess risk. We can also recognize the influence of those cognitive and emotional ones on other people, their behavior, and be able to say, no, I'm not sure that this makes sense, and step back from the situation. Now, I'd like you to turn to page 5. We're going to take a little brief side tour that we're going to come back to before we go any further. So what I'd like you to do is read the scenario. I'll just read it here, and I'd like you to answer at the end which program you would prefer. Imagine that Tucson is preparing for the outbreak of an unusual flu-like disease which is expected to kill 600 people. 2 alternative programs to combat the disease have been proposed. Assume the exact scientific estimate of the consequences of the programs are as follows. Program A, 200 people will be saved. Program B, there's a 1/3 probability that 600 will be saved and a 2/3 probability that no one will be saved. What do you think? I'm not looking for your answer, just check a box. Decide which one of those you prefer. There's not a right or a wrong answer.
Move out of Tucson. Yeah.
I'm sorry, move out of Tucson? You're a policy decision maker, so you have to decide here. Okay, the next 2 slides will briefly want to, what I'm trying to do is briefly get us on the same page with respect to definitions of reward and risk and the continuum they occupy. So, what are reward and risk? Reward is kind of an easy one. It's the return or profit on an investment, and that's pretty much a pure economic definition. How you benefit from that is really the point for most of us, of what we do. It's the opportunity to live life as you desire. It's having the financial wherewithal and stability to feel safe and secure and do what you want to do. Risk, on the other hand, there's a whole lot more going on there, and so we've got more definitions involved. The scientific understanding of risk would be uncertainty. We certainly have an emotional dimension. We know from behavioral finance that emotions come in and affect all of our decision making and the way we feel about taking risk. The common uses of risk would include hazard. Which risks should we rank? Probability. What's the chance or risk of getting the bird flu? Consequence. What happens if I let my parking meter expire? Probably know what that's going to be. And threat. How great is the threat or risk of riding a motorcycle? We also know that we all feel differently about risk. It reflects our upbringing, it reflects our gender, it reflects our current financial stability, and it reflects a lot of innate wiring about who we are as well. Of course, the one that we're most interested in is investor risk, and the first one here is the downside risk. And when we say downside,